Hi guys, this lesson is going to be about factoring. I've gone outside so I can get some peace and quiet, so if you hear a car horn or my children screaming, then just know everything's normal. What is factoring? We're going to be factoring expressions, and it's going to show you the product as factors. Now you've done this before, except you've not had to work with expressions that are algebraic before. So if you have 40 as the product, an example of rewriting it as factors could be 5 times 8. Now those aren't the only factors. 15 could be expressed as 3 times 5. 20a could be expressed as 2 times 10a. And again, some of these have lots more factors, but just to give you an idea of what factoring looks like, you're breaking the product apart into factors. So I've got a list of things that might help you when you factor expressions. Number one, we need to try to combine like terms. This may even include doing the distributive property, so be sure to combine like terms. Then determine the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is the biggest number that divides the terms evenly. Most of our expressions may just have 2 terms, but you might have an expression with 5 terms. You would need the biggest number that divides all of those 5 terms evenly. Now we're going to rewrite the expression as factors of the greatest common factor and what remains. The last thing you do is to pull the greatest common factor out front and leave what remains in each term inside the parentheses. And I think these steps will be a little more clear as we do some. Let me also apologize for my handwriting. This may be the worst of them all, but I think you can tell what it is. It's just not beautiful. Okay, this expression is 32x plus 40. So we have to think, what's the largest number that will divide 32 and 40 evenly? And it's 8. So I'm going to rewrite 32x and I'm going to rewrite 40 and show the factors of 8 and what remains to get back to 32x, and 8 and what remains to get back to 40. So 8 times 4x is 32x plus 8 times 5 equals 40. Now you'll notice 8 is common to both terms, so we get to pull it out front of parentheses. Now when we pull it out of each term, I get to see what remains. And what remains is 4x plus 5, and that's what goes in the parentheses. Now we're done at this step, but I've got a couple of ideas for you to think about to know if you've done the correct greatest common factor. So you can look and see that 4 and 5, they don't share any factors. So you did pull out the greatest common factor when you pulled out 8. And to test it, you can redistribute 8 back through 4 and 5. 8 times 4 is 32x, and 8 times 5 is 40. So when you remultiplied it, you got back to the original expression. Now that check step is a good thing to always do when you finish factoring, but the circled answer is finished. If it asks you to factor it, you have factored that expression into factors 8 and 4x plus 5. Let's look at another one. 12 minus 24y plus 30. This has 3 terms, so I have to find the greatest common factor. What's the biggest number that will divide 12, 24, and 30 evenly? And that answer is 6. So we're going to break apart each of those terms as 6 times whatever else needs to be to get back to the original number. So I need to get back to 12. So 6 times what? 6 times 2. And in the middle term, 6 times what? 6 times 4y. And the last term is 6 times what? 5m to get you back to 30m. So 6 is common to all terms. I can pull it out front. And when I do, I get to see what's left. And if I get rid of the 6 because I've pulled it out front, I'm left with 2 minus 4y plus 5m. You could also go back to see if the distributive property will give you the original expression, and it will, because 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times negative 4y is negative 24y, 6 times 5m is 30m. Alright, This one is a rational number problem. Notice step 1 said to combine like terms, and I have like terms. 2.5 and 7.5 will combine. So if I say 2 plus 2.5 plus 7.5, we'll get 10. And m was with both of those terms. So those combine to give me 10m minus 5k. My greatest common factor is 5. I'm going to rewrite each of those terms using the factor of 5. So 5 times what minus 5 times what? This is a little different approach. It shows you better how I decide what goes into each of those parentheses. So 5 times what is 10m? It's 5 times 2. And don't forget to put the variable with it. 5 times what is 5k? 5 times 1k. Now the 1 is optional. Even if you don't write it, it's understood that it's still there. So I'm going to factor the 5 out front, and I'm left with 2m minus 1k, and that's what goes in the parentheses. The factors are 5 and 2m minus k. That's the final answer. Okay, now this one's interesting because I have to do the distributive property before I combine like terms. Now if you'll remember, that 3 is on the outside of the parentheses, so that means 3 is multiplied to everything on the inside of the parentheses. So I'm going to draw arrows to remind me what to multiply the 3 by. 3 times 2c is 6c, and 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. Then bring down your minus 30. Now I have like terms. I have 2 constants. I have negative 18 and negative 30, and the way I usually handle those is I change all the subtractions to addition. But if you change subtraction to addition, you have to change the sign of the following number, so that's going to make it look like 6c plus negative 18 plus negative 30. That's important. If you change an addition problem, a subtraction problem to an addition problem, please be sure you change the sign of the second number. Now I can combine negative 18 and negative 30, and that will give me negative 48. Now I'm looking for the greatest common factor because I've combined all the like terms. The greatest common factor of 6 and 48 is 6. I'm going to rewrite 6c, and I'm going to rewrite negative 48 as factors of 6. 6 times what is 6c? 1c. 6 times what is negative 48? Negative 4. Negative 8. So now 6 is a common factor to both terms. I'm going to pull it out front. And what's left after I pull the 6 out is 1c plus negative 8. And that will be my final answer. How you doing? I have 4 problems I'm going to put up on the board. So what I would hope that you would do is to maybe pause the program, write these down and try them all, and then come back and you'll see me work them so you can see, hopefully you get them right, but if you don't, then you can see at what point you went off track. So my first problem is negative 15 plus 27m. My greatest common factor is 3. So I'm going to rewrite both of those terms using 3 as a factor. So I'm going to say 3 times something to get me to negative 15 and 3 times something to get me to 27m. It'll be 3 times negative 5 and 3 times 9m. I'm going to pull the 3 out front of the parentheses, and when I do, I can get rid of those and see what's left in each term. Negative 5 plus 9m is what remains, so that's my final answer. My second one, I have a distributive property to take care of, so I'm going to multiply 3 by each term on the inside of the parentheses. I put a ghost 1 beside that g to remind myself its coefficient is 1. 3 times 1g is 3g. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, and the subtracted 9 comes down at the end. Now you'll notice I've also changed my subtraction to addition, and I changed the sign of the following number. So there's no doubt now I have 2 constants that I can combine, and they're both negative. Same signs, add and keep. So I'm going to add 12 and 9 and get 21, and I keep it negative. So 3g plus negative 21, and I've combined like terms. Now guys, remember we're factoring. If the question says, can you simplify this, I would be done at this point. But because it says factor it, it means pull out what they share, and the greatest common factor of those 2 is 3. So rewrite each term as a factor of 3. 3 times 1g is 3g, and 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. So pull 3 out front of the parentheses. What's left will be g, or 1g, plus negative 7. Okay, let's look at number 3. Number 3 has like terms. I might change that subtraction to adding the opposite. If you don't, just realize it's negative 14c plus 8c. Different signs here. So 14 is negative, the 8 is positive. Different signs subtract. 14 minus 8 is 6. And the biggest of those, the one with the larger absolute value, is 14, so I keep it negative 6c. Now my greatest common factor between 20 and 6 is 2. I'm going to rewrite both of those terms using a factor of 2. So each of those rewritten, so I have to ask myself, 2 times what is negative 20, and it's negative 10. 2 times what is negative 6c, and it's negative 3c. I'll pull my 2 out front, and I'm left with negative 10 plus negative 3c. While I'm on this one, let me just tell you, we could have factored out a negative 2. If I had factored out a negative 2, I would have had positive 10 plus 3c. The key is just to be sure at the very end, could I redistribute the 2 and get back to the original problem? And you could. Last one, I have negative 8 minus 10n. My greatest common factor is 2. Could be negative 2. I'm going to leave it positive though and take care of the signs inside the parentheses. So I changed my subtraction to addition and changed the sign of the second number. So 2 times what gets me to negative 8? So I have to have a negative 4 so that I'll end up with a negative 8. 2 times what gets me to negative 10n has to be negative 5n. So I factor my 2 out front, and when I pull 2 out, I'm left with negative 4 plus negative 5n, and that's the final answer. This is like number 3. I could have factored out negative 2, and if I factor out negative 2, inside the parentheses would have been positive 4 plus 5n. So either way, just be sure with your signs, if I redistribute, could I get back to the original problem? Alright guys, if you need more help, just let us know.